everybody. Yeah. Welcome to the Queens Baseball Convention 2017. Obviously, we've got a great panel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mark Healey. I'm the founder and the executive editor of Gotham Baseball Magazine and GothamBaseball.com. And these gentlemen up here, I've known and proud to have worked with many of them over the years, either as them being guests or sharing the same press box. So they don't really need an introduction, but I'll do so anyway. This is Adam Rubin from ESPN. He's been covering the Mets for a very long time. To his left is Matt Cerrone from Metsblog. What is this, my right? On my right is Pete McCarthy from WOR 710, does the pre and post game for the Mets, as well as the host of the Sports Zone. And then we have our mystery guest, Evan Roberts from WFAN. Well, we're going to talk about the state of the Mets. Some guy named Bobby Valentine took most of my time, so. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to get to it right away. We're going to talk about the state of the Mets as they're currently constituted. My first question is going to go to Adam. Adam, I don't know anyone who's covered the Mets as long as you. So, and I also know that you cover the Mets as an organization. You talk to people up and down, the ladder, and you talk to people in the organization. So, with all that knowledge, right now, as the Mets are currently constituted, do you think that they are a World Series contender?
I'm actually, to be honest, a little bit concerned about this upcoming year because the more ifs you have coming into a season, the better chance there is of something going awry. And I just look at from 5 starting pitchers returning from surgery to an if with d'Arnaud, an if with Conforto, an if with Duda, that David Wright, how much playing time, the bullpen right now, and not to pile on with the negativity, but I just worry that they haven't done enough this winter to improve the team to really be an elite team. Now that said, with the quality of the starting pitching, assuming they're healthy, and that's still an if, but assuming they're healthy, they're obviously going to be a very competitive team. But I just wish they had made that little extra investment, go the extra mile to really be one of the elite teams, to be up there with the Cubs. And I know the Nationals have had some turnover, but to be up there with the Nationals and teams like that.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of along the same lines. The bullpen really concerns me, at least as it's currently constituted. I'm not so concerned about the offense because that seems to happen every year, and they somehow manage to pull that through. It's the health of the arms, right? And we haven't seen them yet. So until we get to spring training and actually put eyeballs on these guys throwing, and they look healthy, and they're throwing against competition, and it's evolving in the right way, and until I see that personally, that's what I need to see. But I agree with Adam a little bit in terms of acquisitions or just bolstering. I don't really know what that should have been. There's a lot of arguments for Wieters. I prefer d'Arnaud. There's arguments to get certain relief pitchers and stuff. I don't know where that money goes, but it definitely feels incomplete or potentially incomplete if any one thing goes wrong.
Before I pass the mic to Pete and get his take as well as Evan on that question, I do want to say that one of the great things about baseball and fans, and when we talk about, the off season and what teams' decisions they made and what, this is all something I think I could speak for everyone we grew up with. I grew up in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, and we would sit on the stoop every day and talk about, even when the Mets were terrible and the Yankees were owning the town in the 70s, we would argue about, was Lee Mazzilli better than Omar Moreno? Or, was Thurman Munson as good as, Jerry Grody and stuff like that? So this has always been a huge dream for me to be able to talk baseball with these folks who it's just a lot of fun, and I really appreciate them coming and being a part of this today. So, Pete, what do you think about where the Mets stand as a contender?
Well, I think you could always talk World Series with this team because there's always that if the pitching stays healthy and you get 4 starting pitchers to the finish line, you could have the advantage, such a big advantage in games 3, games 4 of a series. If they get to a best-of-7 series with 4 number 1, number 2 type of starters, they have the ability to push through the postseason. I think they're built in that way, but you have to get there. And that was the problem last year. You play that wild card game, you don't have the same advantage because other teams are going to have that other number one that can match up. So to me, the benchmark, I don't worry about the Cubs. I think the benchmark always has to be the Nationals. You got to win your division. And if I'm looking right now, I think the Nationals are a better team than the Mets. I think they're more complete. I think the offense is better. So I think that's the concern going in. If everything breaks the Mets' way, the potential is there. If they get into those best of 5, best of 7 series, they have a great advantage, but they have to reach that point. I think that's what you worry about with this team, with some holes in the bullpen potentially, and a lineup that's been very inconsistent over the last couple of years.
The Nationals bullpen isn't.
No, the Nationals have questions in the pen too, but I think that offense, they could be a 5-run per game offense. I love what they did bringing in Adam Eaton. That offense could be great, especially if Bryce Harper bounces back. If Murphy's even close to what he was last year, that's a dynamic club. What do you think, Evan?
You guys are way too negative. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I mean, I don't know if I'm biased because I've watched just garbage for the last few months. I mean, every team I root for stinks, so when I see the Mets, they're certainly a lot better. You're right, they have a lot of questions. Every question went wrong last year, every one of them. I mean, what question went right last year? Addison Reed, he was great. And they still managed to somehow make the postseason. So, look, nobody's wrong with the questions that this team has, but you said it. The Nationals bullpen stinks. And I'll tell you something about the Nationals. I'm still convinced they're a gutless team. I'm still convinced of that. I know they won the division last year. Yeah, they won the division last year because the Mets had everything go wrong, and they never really tested. And I'll answer this for you, and you know this. Daniel Murphy's not having the year that he had last year, this year, and I'll make any bet you want to make about that. But don't make that bet because, he had a career year last year. So, and Dusty Baker, give me a break, all right? Can they win the World Series? They can. I mean, look, they have a lot of questions in the bullpen. I agree with you guys about that. But I think what Sandy has shown is that if this team is in contention, they'll do something. The Jay Bruce move, I mean, wasn't the greatest thing in the world. I would have rather have gotten Jonathan Lucroy, but whatever. But I think he's shown that if they're decent, yeah, no kidding. If they're decent, they'll make a move. So the bullpen scares me. And obviously, you don't want to blow games in April and May and June with a lousy bullpen. But I think one thing about bullpens is you never know from year to year. And yeah, they're going to need guys that maybe we're not expecting to step up. Can Hansel Robles all of a sudden become a big-time reliever? Probably not, but you never know. Could Zach Wheeler? I think you've mentioned it in your tweets because I follow you. During games, you drive me nuts. When the games are over, you're the best. Oh no! I mean, you drive me nuts. I DVR games because of you because I don't want to follow you. But after games, listen, I think we all agree. He's like the best Met beat writer on Twitter.
Absolutely.
I like Carrig is very close. Mark Carrig. I like him. You're very good.
Thank you.
So the moral of the story is, yeah, I mean, they can compete, but I think there's so many questions before we get to October. You're right, though. They got to win this freaking division. I don't want to mess around with this stupid wild card game and watch Connor Gillespie hit bombs off Jeiris Familia. And that's a concern. Familia's a concern. Not only the fact he's going to be suspended, but the fact that, he's kind of blown it in big spots the last few times. And I'm surprised because when he got that 6-out save against the Dodgers, what did we all think? We all thought, let's admit it, we had Mariano. That's what we thought. That was a Mariano-like save. And since then, he hasn't been the guy. I'm sorry I've talked too much. Go ahead.
No, it's okay, Evan. I think that you kind of
Ran the gamut.
really brought that together because I feel the same way. I've questioned Alderson. Anybody who's been to a Queens baseball convention has certainly heard me talk about decision-making by the front office. Right? I mean, one thing I've learned, I think, is that if they do the major things, I think that bringing back Cespedes was obviously something that most of us thought was not going to happen. And he is the impact guy. There is no question when he's in the lineup, they're a different team. So when you have that guy, and then you're bringing back, and of course you can I think, argue about the intelligence of bringing back Neil Walker just because of the injury situation. But at least they have a core at offensively that you can at least say, okay, if they're healthy, we can win. And you have the pitching. My next question is about the bullpen, to be more specific. I was talking with Pete before the panel, and we were talking about guys that we thought that are still out there that the Mets should get. So if you had a choice right now with the relievers that are out there, we'll start with Matt Cerrone. If you had a choice with the relievers that are out there, who would you sign? Would you sign one? Would you sign two? Personally, I'm a Joe Smith guy because I love the sidearmers, and he was a Brooklyn Cyclone. But that's because I'm a dopey fan. What do you think? Where do you think the Mets should go?
Well, fans aren't dopey. Let's just start there. Yeah, I would. I like Romo. Obviously, it's going to cost the most, I think, but makes the most sense because he can be a closer if they need him. And the thought of Reed, Familia, and Romo at the end of the season is enormous. So, I mean, I would go for that, depending on what they're working with financially. Trade a couple prospects for someone sort of inexpensive reliever that's about to be arbitration. Somebody like that, I think, would be a nice fit. And then whoever will take a minor league deal. I'm friends with Craig Brezzo. I went to high school with him. Like, I would love to see him on the Mets, but, because he's a lefty and they could use more of that. But, that's the approach I would take.
Obviously, Adam, I'd ask you a different question. Along the same lines, based on what you heard, where do you think they're leaning as far as filling in the depth in the bullpen?
Well, I mean, you got to start with just analyzing who they have right now. Jeurys Familia is facing the suspension. You look at Jose Reyes got 2 months. Aroldis Chapman got 1 month. The circumstances, I don't know if they're exactly parallel, but in all those cases, there was no criminal proceeding ultimately either. So you're probably looking somewhere in that range. So Addison Reed is going to be for the first month or two of the season, in all likelihood, the closer. And you think about who the setup men are right now, it's probably the guys who have been starting pitchers, because if everyone's healthy, you have 2 excess starting pitchers. And Sandy seems very amenable to having at least 1, if not 2 of those guys in the bullpen. So you're probably looking at 2, potentially, of 3 guys from Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo is the most likely those guys, I think, to end up in the bullpen, with Robert Gazelman in the rotation and maybe Wheeler in the bullpen too. So you're looking at those 2 guys. You're looking at Hansel Robles. From the left side, you have Josh Smoker and Josh Edgins. So that's kind of the bullpen you're looking at right now. And to me, it's a little dicey, I would say, depending on how Zach Wheeler is, because Zach Wheeler at the beginning of the year, he's coming off 2 full seasons lost, so they're going to have him warm up for the start of innings. He's not going to be entering with runners on base, and kind of for an 8th inning guy, you may need someone like that. So it's a little scary. So I mean, who do they need? I think they need both a lefty and a righty. It's a shame. See, the thing that bothers me, and I hate to dwell on it too much, is that they're so close right now, and not to go the extra mile and to be waiting to shed the Jay Bruce contract before you reinvest that money. I mean, Sandy at the winter meetings when we were there specifically said the payroll was probably going to be lower on opening day than it was at that point at the winter meetings, which is about $147 million if you estimate the arbitration players at that point. I mean, to have to subtract $13 million to bring in the Joe Smith or the Sergio Romo, to me, is kind of silly. In Jerry Blevins' case, Jerry Blevins at the winter meetings, they were telling us, look, they're saying privately, look, he's looking for 3 years at $5.5, $6 million a year. We're not doing that. We're only doing 1-year deals for relievers because they're so erratic, and our track record there hasn't been very good. That to me is a little bit depressing. So I don't know who the right guy is. Joe Smith is a friend of mine from his first tour of the duty with the Mets. I hope it is for my sake. But I mean, certainly I think they need both a lefty and a righty still who could pitch in the late innings.
All right, Pete, both you and Ev get a ton of calls on this, and I'm sure that it's not the first time you've been asked that question. So if you had a preference, or based on what you hear, I mean, where do you think of the Mets bullpen and how they're constituted, and do they need to go out and get some more help?
Yeah, I thought all offseason they need a lefty and a righty. I like the idea of Blevins coming back. He's proved he could pitch here. He's effective against lefties. He did against righties last year, too. So you think about that first month, you could go and have him as your 7th inning guy and not just the lefty specialist. He could throw a full inning for you, maybe. Now, I tend to agree with the Mets. I wouldn't go multiple years for relievers, but it's late January. He's not getting the Brett Cecil 4-year, $30 million deal.
But doesn't it depend on the guy, though? Can't you make a different like I understand that generally you don't want to give.
They're too unpredictable. That's what makes Mariano, so far up and above. These other middle relievers, they're good 1 year, they're bad another. Antonio Bastardo last year, you looked at his numbers, you said, oh, this guy will be all right. People were happy that he came in, and then a disaster from spring training on, and they gave him 2 years, and they're able to ship him out. But you never know at that position. Now you have a little more comfortability with Blevins because he's done it with the team.
Right.
But I think that he's the best fit. Romo worries me a little bit. He wasn't as durable last year. He's never thrown more than 62 innings. Terry will rip through that in a month. So, how's this guy gonna, last if he's one of the setup guys for the Mets? So, to me, it's an area that they do need to address before the season. But the real key to me is to get off to a fast start, be first place in July, and then make the move that the Indians and the Cubs made last year. That's how you pull yourself through the postseason. The Mets can have a great advantage with the starting pitching, but you want to have somebody dominant like we thought, Familia could be a couple of years ago. Maybe we're not as positive about that now, to come in and help build the depth of that pen. And the Mets, one area where they are stronger than at least I thought was ESPN ranked them a top 10 farm system. So they should still have the pieces to go out and add something in July, which I think you got to keep in the back of your mind. But you got to be in a good position at that point that it's worthwhile to invest. You can't be sitting there 10 games back of the Nationals like last year, where should we buy or should we not? What do you think, Adam?
You're right. You said a lot of things that are right. I'm kind of with them. I don't want to give 3-year contracts to relievers. There's very few of them. Look at Brad Brock, right? Brad Brock had a great year last year, and I'm sure that wasn't a rumor, like maybe they trade Jay Bruce or Curtis Granderson for Brad Brock. What was he like 2 years ago, 3 years ago? You see so much of that. So if you're giving me the choice between Joe Smith and Sergio Romo, I'd probably go with Sergio Romo, only because just watching a lot of Joe Smith last year, he did not look very good.
No, he didn't. You're right.
What does that mean? Is it a down year? I don't know. I like Joe Smith when he was a Met. I'm like you. I like those sidearmers. But you're right. You're right. You wait to the trade deadline. These options aren't that good. So I think if you can survive the first few months, and it's scary because you don't want to be giving games away because your bullpen's blowing leads. Totally get it. And they're going to have to be careful with the starting pitching. They can't push them. As much as we're going to scream, can Noah start the 8th? Can Harvey, can DeGrom start the 7th or 8th? They have to be smart, and I understand that. So you don't want to blow games, but I'm telling you, you're so right. I'm not saying Andrew Miller or Aroldis Chapman are going to be the guys, but you just know on July 20th, on July 25th, there are going to be relievers out there that right now, if we mention their names, we'd all start drooling. So why waste 2-year deals, 3-year deals on guys that are, they're not that good? I'd rather wait to get, and I understand you have to give up prospects, but hey, top 10, right? ESPN, Keith Law, was that the guy? Yeah. That excited me when I saw that. Except I don't have ESPN Insider. I think you need like the Insider thing. If you want to share a password with me, I'm good.
That's it.
What do you get for the Insider? I mean, what am I getting? Like, I don't even know if it's worth the money. I'm not cheap or anything like that. I just don't get it. So yeah, I would be smart. I'd be frugal with these relievers. You are trying to, I know what you're doing, Rubin. You're stoking Met fan. They don't go the extra mile.
No.
It's the Will Ponds. Listen, they just brought back Cespedes. Now, this may not last forever, but for now, I'm good with them. I'm okay with the Will Ponds for now.
The thing with Blevins, the argument for Blevins would be that if he's going to get 2 years, you're going to be in the same situation a year from now anyway, right? Like if you were able to get him, somebody like that for a year, 12 months from now, we're going to be arguing about how they need a lefty again. So, I mean, that would sort of be the argument for the 2 years.
What if he's a disaster?
It's true, but again, $5-6 million a year, like, eat it. Come on. This is the shot, like that shouldn't be the end of the world.
You're not wrong, but let me ask you this question.
We're not talking $15-20 million player that I'm asking, right? I mean,
how will you feel if they gave Blevins that kind of deal, or Romo or whomever, and now we're at the trade deadline, and there's a guy that's clearly better, and because they gave those years and money to him, they can't trade for someone that's clearly better.
That's fair.
That scares the crap out of me.
Equally ridiculous, and
that is ridiculous.
Do that, right? So that's. But if we operate under that, paradigm, you're right.
But that's reality.
It is. Thankfully, there's teams like the A's and the Braves, and you're right. They have so many relievers that they're stockpiling. I mean, they're going to have plenty of guys to deal in the summer. So I mean, that move's going to be there. That's the other thing.
And Steve Phillips isn't the general manager anymore, so you don't have to worry about. Yeah. Oh God. Look, we obviously didn't get the amount of time. I do want to ask at least one more question. I think is valid. Many of you may disagree, but I think one of the biggest, I don't want to say biggest, but a major factor in the Mets' success over the last several years, as far as them being able to bring up guys and get them acclimated right away and having them be able to play was the role that Wally Backman played, not only as a manager, but as a trusted advisor to Terry Collins. And you can name a ton of different players that Terry felt he could call Wally and ask Wally, Wally, what do you think we should do with this guy? How is this guy going to play? Is this guy going to be good for me? And I think that probably to his demise with the front office, one of the reasons why Terry doesn't have such a great relationship with the front office is that Terry trusted Wally so much. Now, the AAA manager is Pedro Lopez, excuse me. Thank you, Adam. Is Pedro Lopez. And he's a guy that has an impeccable reputation. He's a guy that's come up through the system, and he is, I believe, the last layover from Tony Bernazard. I think he was the last guy that Tony Bernazard hired that is still with the team. And he's the one good thing. He's one good thing from the Bernazard era. But I'm concerned, and I'm overblowing it a little bit, but I am concerned about the communication. Does Terry have that level of trust with Pedro? And I know he's worked with him as the minor league coordinator, but, and this question is for you first, Adam. Where is Terry going to go when they start to bring guys up that have to fill in tough spots? Is he going to go to Pedro? Does he have that kind of a relationship, or are they going to be missing Wally's, evaluation and that kind of molding these players' ability as they move forward?
Well, at the risk of breaking your heart, I think the relationship you talked about is probably I don't want to say overstated, but the importance of that was not as much as it got a little embellished in the media. One, Frank Viola, the pitching coach, is still there. Jack Voigt, the hitting coach, who doesn't get a lot of credit at all, is still there. Terry, as much as he likes to talk about making decisions, he doesn't make the decisions anyway. So, I'll give you a succinct answer. In the grand scheme of life, I really don't think it's that big a deal. And they'll have Pedro and him will have a more than fine relationship. Pedro's a great guy. They're going to be in spring training, obviously, together to get even more bonding. And I'm sure he'll call down there. And are Pedro's evaluation skills as good as Wally's? We'll find out this year, because they do lean on the AAA manager a little bit to say who's performing well, who merits coming up. But they don't always listen to people anyway. I remember Wally was screaming at them all last year to call up TJ Rivera, and he was the last one they called up. They called up everyone on the 40-man roster before they finally called up TJ Rivera. So that AAA manager dynamic is probably, with all due respect, probably a little overstated in terms of importance in the grand scheme of life.
That wouldn't be the first time you said that about me, Adam, so it's okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. That's every organization's got their dynamic, so we'll see. I agree with you on, I think Terry and Wally probably had a pretty good relationship, but it is what it is, right? They reach an impasse. I think he wanted to be on the big league staff, and it was time that wasn't going to happen.
Terry wanted him on the big league staff.
Terry
that
wanted
should be
him.
noted.
Well, there are reasons, pros and cons, to having Wally Backman on your big league staff around these guys. It's so that's something to be concerned, and it just wasn't going to happen, and here we are.
I'll give you one little tidbit that I think I mentioned on Twitter, in passing, way back when. But when Terry Collins originally got hired, Wally Backman was actually told that he was going to be the third base coach. He was told that he was going to be on the major league staff, and all of a sudden, someone higher up nixed it. So just throwing that out there.
Right. Frank Viola's there. I think that's important, because I don't know how much credit we get him for everybody, but he's worked a lot with Steven Matz, all these pitchers that have come up over the years. Robert Gesellman didn't spend a lot of time at AAA last year, but I think you got to give him a ton of, as much as you can with the coaches, some credit for what he has done. It's been the pitchers that have come up and had the most success, and I think having Frank Viola there is a major plus, and figure out the rest. What's up, Evan?
I think the dynamic is changing mostly for me and you. We're not going to take constant phone calls about Wally Backman being the next manager of the team. So you and I are going to deal with this more than anybody.
I'll call anyway.
I'll call anyway. But outside of that, I don't know. I just know that every other week it would be Wally's got to take over. He's got passion. He'll scream, he'll yell, and he should be the next manager of the team. And I don't know where he's going to end up. Is he managing in Mexico? Is that where he's going? All right. You better get down there quick before they build the wall. I mean, Sandy may help build the wall now, saying, I don't want him back.
President's a Mets fan. So.
Is that true, though? I mean, do we really know that? I don't know about that. Maybe. I have seen a picture of when Beltran struck out.
Yeah.
The president is standing there, like, staring. Almost like he knew what was going to happen.
Hillary Clinton's like 5 rows back.
No, is that true? Hillary's in that picture,
Look at that
too?
picture again, yeah.
I don't want to look at that picture
I
ever
know.
again, actually. I'm going to decide not to.
I wanted this to go on a lot longer. I think.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that's right.
No one's yanking the...
I got time?
We got questions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a question.
All right, so I will get some more questions. That's more about Wally Backman. All right, no, we're going to take questions. I said that if we had time, that and there's nobody telling me whether we have time or not, so we're just going to keep going.
They went home.
I said that we were going to take questions from the audience. So if you're in the audience, you want to ask a question, actually, why don't you give them a microphone and then pass it around to somebody? Just say, who you want to ask your question to, and hit your question.
All right, well, this is a general question to the panel here. Looking at, now that Jay Bruce is going to stick around, it looks like it's going to happen. I mean, the Mets have a potential powerhouse of an outfield. If you look at the home run totals of Bruce, Granderson, and Cespedes, I mean, do you think those three guys are going to gel this year and hopefully produce, an 80 home run season?
Well, it's funny. It's a good problem to have, right? I mean, the worst case scenario is those three, and that's not even a worst case scenario. So, I mean, it could be worse. Let's put it that way. And I obviously, it's not, I think, ideally what they wanted. I think the goal was to trade Bruce for someone's relief pitcher, but it just wasn't there. They totally misread, I think, what was going on. I don't know. I still don't know that I'm completely convinced that Bruce will be out there on opening day. I mean, I know that's what they said, and that's what reportedly they told him. But, that's a long time from now, 2 months. So a lot can happen. There's still deals. We went through this with Ike Davis, similar kind of a thing where they, over and over and over again, and then boom, there he was. They said, Sandy came out and said, Oliver Perez, Luis Castillo, Jason Bay will be your starting outfielder. And then 2 weeks later, they were gone. So, you never know. He has a way of talking in the moment that may not actually be what will happen. So, I would say wait and see. But again, if he's here, you're right. 3 guys in the outfield with the potential to hit 30 home runs, life could be worse.
Keep going with that? Go ahead. I think everything's posturing. And is Jay Bruce going to be there on February? Well, the pitchers and catchers report on February 12th. Is Jay Bruce going to be there at start of spring training? Probably. Is going to be there on opening day? Well, if there's an injury to another team, I'm not so sure. And I certainly don't think he's going to be there beyond July 31st, if nothing else. I guess the other impact that people are going to ask is, what's the impact on Michael Conforto? I refuse to believe, and Scott Boras is probably on the phone already screaming, that there's no way Michael Conforto is going to be in AAA. So you're probably looking, it's going to push Brandon Nimmo, if anything, to AAA if Jay Bruce is around. So you're going to have a left fielder, Yoenis Cespedes, and get most of the playing time. You're going to have Curtis Granderson most of the time in center field, with Juan Lagares complimenting him against left-handed pitching. Defensive issue there, obviously, with Granderson in center field. And then right field, there's going to have to be some dynamic figured out between Bruce and Conforto, where Terry figures out a way to get both of them in the lineup a fair amount. Now, Conforto is going to get some exposure to first base in spring training. Obviously, he's a lefty. Duda's a lefty, so there's a problem there. But you know what? Injuries happen, whether it's an outfielder that gets injured or Duda gets re-injured. He missed most of last year with a back issue. So things have a way of working out, even if there's not a trade, to where they can all get playing time. It's the same issue with Jose Reyes. Where's Jose Reyes going to play? Well, maybe David Wright's not going to be healthy. He's going to play a lot. But even if he's not, even if David Wright is healthy, Rey's still going to get 60 games at third base. He's going to get 20 games at shortstop. He's going to get 10 games at second base. He'll get 5 games in center field. So there'll be opportunities for those guys no matter what.
I've always hated Jay Bruce because when I used to, and not personally, obviously, just as a player, when I used to host Baseball Digest Fantasy Baseball on Sirius XM, Jay Bruce was one of those guys that the fantasy experts would always talk about. Oh my God, you got to have Jay Bruce. You got to have Jay Bruce. So one year, I decided, okay, I'm going to put Jay Bruce on my fantasy team, and he sucked, and it was horrendous. So ever since then, because he disappears, he just disappears for like weeks at a time. So when they made the deal, I wasn't upset that they made the deal, because at that time they didn't really give up anything. I didn't hate the deal, But I just felt like he was a guy that, to me, I always found to be inconsistent. And he proved that, at least last year, for almost the whole second half of the season, he was invisible. So I like the idea of that outfield, and I like the idea of what they can do, because I like all of them personally. You know, I mean, I like they're good guys. They're go-getters. You know, they play hard. But at the end of the day, I have to agree with, both Matt and Adam, in the sense that, I don't think what we see now is what we're necessarily going to have when opening day comes. We got a couple of minutes.
Conforto's better now. So why hold the kid back?
Right.
Play him in right field. Yes, you can hit more. Bruce can hit more home runs than Conforto, but look at everything else. What Conforto's shown in the minors and at times in the big leagues. Not like he's never hit in the big leagues. Batting average, on base, defensively, it's 1,000 times better than Jay Bruce. Even in a position he doesn't know all that well in right field, I'm willing to say that. So that's the issue. It's not that Jay Bruce is a terrible player or anything along those lines. You have someone who's better and younger that you want to play and develop. Why hinder that?
I'm scared if they get rid of Jay Bruce, he's going to hit 45 home runs in a contract year. And I'd keep him. You're right about Conforto. You got to find a way to play him every day. And maybe it's not ideal to move him to first base, because is that even going to be his long-term position? Probably not. But Jay Bruce last year came over here, and he was terrible. We all know that. You give him a full year in New York, a full year to prepare for playing here. In a contract year, I would just ride it for one more year. I know it creates a lot of problems. You're right. How do you get Conforto time? How do you? I get all that, but I have a feeling if and I don't know what they're going to do. They may end up trading him. I have no idea. But if he ends up on this team, he'll lead the outfield in home runs. I think he'll hit more home runs than any of those other guys.
Look, I want to thank all of you for being patient for the panel and for sticking around. I know that, it's been a long day, but I really appreciate it. I want to thank Matt and Adam and Pete and especially Evan, because he came even though we didn't promote his. Well, you're right. Anyway, so thank you guys for being part of the panel, and let's go Mets.